Welcome to all our viewers. You're watching India Inc.'s Dream Budget right here on NDTV Profit. Today we're going to be discussing expectations of the real estate sector. After witnessing a slew of economic headwinds as well as sluggish demand over the last 2 years, a slew of reforms over the last 6 months has helped the overall sentiment pick up amongst real estate developers. The forthcoming year brings in a lot of expectations, and in many ways, the Union Budget 2013-2014 could pave way for the real estate growth in the coming fiscal. Joining me in this discussion today, I've got Mr. Rajiv Talwar. He is the Group ED at DLF. Mr. Abhishek Lodha, he is the MD at the Lodha Group, as well as Mr. Irfan Razak. He is the CMD of Prestige Estates. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining me in. I want to first start off with getting your expectations from the Union Budget and what you think Mr. P. Chidambaram should do to help spur growth in the real estate sector. Mr. Talwar, let's start off with you.
What do we expect? Yes, I think the overall growth rates coming in are very sluggish, as we learned yesterday and day before. Therefore, a little caution that yes, there's a need to give a boost to the economy, and therefore any dream budget should be looking to give an overall stimulus to the economy so that all sectors, including housing, real estate and construction, get a major boost. The other one would be to give the buyers of homes who are really individuals and who finance this industry to a very large extent some kind of confidence and some kind of empowerment. So therefore, two really broad planks. One, empower the buyer, give him relief, give him incentives for investment into housing. And number two, provide a boost to the Indian economy whereby all other industries would not only go in for products of the real estate, whether it be offices or retail or housing, and thereby not only give a boost to the real estate industry, but more than that, I think the multiplier effect on the employment and on the large number of industries which contribute to any successful project of real estate and housing. That would be my broad plank. I'd then wait for my colleagues to give their views.
All right. Mr. Lodha, you want to run us through what you're expecting and how the government can help the sector grow?
I believe the government first needs to define what the overall government stand vis-a-vis real estate is. If there is a sector which generates the second highest employment in the country, a sector on account of which 70% of the wealth in this country has been created over the last 10 years, people who've owned homes have really done very well for themselves. A sector which has deep linkages in the entire economy and generates a significant multiplier effect like Mr. Talwar mentioned, and a sector which serves a social need of providing housing which is a good quality housing, which is an urgent need of a growing economy. If a sector is so important on all these four factors, can the government continue to have an approach which sort of treats it as a stepchild? I think it's very important, in addition to changes in regulations or changes in incentives, that this finance minister takes the step forward to say that just like in China and other economies which have grown over the past couple of decades, real estate is going to be an important contributor in a very big way to the economic growth of this country, and hence it's a sector of importance to the government and one which the government will support in every practical and reasonable manner. And if that sort of a direction is given, then I'm sure that the smaller problems that the sector faces will start getting resolved, because overall the direction of not treating this sector as a stepchild has to be first set by the central government.
So you think that the long-standing demand of an industry status is something that could really help the sector as a whole, Mr. Lodha?
I think an industry status would be an outcome of a decision by the government to say that real estate is important to us. Industry status is great, even if they decide to give that or not give that, I think I again reiterate, saying that real estate is important for India's social and economic development, and hence we are going to support it, and hence we are going to make it flourish, is something that I think the government, the facts say that this needs to get done. Without real estate, this economy can't get back to its old growth trajectory. And I think the government should, really say that the biggest bang for the buck comes in by making real estate strong, and we are going to support it.
Right. Mr. Raza, you want to comment on that?
Yes, please. I mean, I go with my colleagues. Main thing is we should realize that this is the industry that provides the biggest employment in this country. Secondly, housing is a need. It's without doubt, there's a lot more housing that needs to be developed to see that everyone gets a shelter, which is good sanitary conditions. Now, for this sector to really flourish, what the government needs to do is, because for me the end buyer is the consumer, and you're taxing the consumer some 30-35% directly and apart from the indirect taxes, and that makes the product unaffordable at the end when the home buyer is there. So if you support and if you are able to make it even in such a way that you stagger the make it in a slab wise, where you've got a home with up to 50 lakhs, a different rate of taxation, above 50 lakhs a different rate of taxation, above 1 crore a different rate of taxation, that will probably help the first home buyer who wants to have a good home and a good living condition, and he keeps buying. I agree with Mr. Talwar, which says that really it's the end buyer who's financing this entire real estate, and it's the end buyer that needs to be incentivized. It's the end buyer who needs to make the product affordable and see that they buy their homes, they get their home, and that will help kickstart the economy, kickstart the industry, which is really struggling hard to survive.
So, Mr. Talwar, just coming back to the same now, for principal deductions for... Sure, go ahead, sir.
I mean, they've been raising a very correct point that I think the government needs to take a stand now. Please remember that across various countries, you have some places, of course, like China, where you see a boom in the steel consumption, in cement consumption, in infrastructure, and in housing. You have US, which has a housing starts index. And in India, we face a shortage. I think we are constantly devising rules and regulations which delay projects, which mean a lot of stoppages, but besides stoppages, they also perhaps mean payments. And I think that itself eats into the industry. So therefore, to give a direction to the economy and to the banks and to the federal regulator, the Reserve Bank of India, that the government needs to take a stand and a very clear direction that yes, it will not only get industry status, but infrastructure status. And the buyers, especially those who are living in their own homes, need not only to be given a much higher exemption from interest, because they're already contributing not only to the capital deployed, but also to the interest which they are paying up, and therefore that should not add to their burden, but decrease their burden. After all, they're fulfilling a need to get housing. And more than that, a tax holiday on this industry. I think that those are the kind of signals which need to go out, that yes, invest into housing, make up the shortage of almost crores of homes which are in demand right now, and the additional burden which is put on the industry by higher risk weightage allotted to it by the Reserve Bank of India. Those kind of things, I think, will give a very clear stand, as Abhishek said, that the government needs to make it clear that this will be one of those sectors which will give a kickstart back to the economy, to come back from what we've seen in 5% GDP growth rate right now to something like 8 and 9, which is essential to fulfill the aspirations of 65% of the population which is below 35. I think we need to plan a totally new paradigm, and development platform will not be left in a vacuum. Please remember, there's a lot of thinking going on, I think, in every party, including the Congress party, including the party in power, including the coalition in power, and I think they need to be very certain that the development platform will be taken up by each one of them, but they have to do it together as a government.